Hey, welcome back to this episode of Think Business Live. Looking forward to talking with David Chernow. David, it's great to see you, connect with you. And I'm looking forward to talking with you about the journey of your writing, the journey of your web, where everything is housed, of your writings, Tiny Insights to Nudge Your Life Open, narratives from David Chernow at lifeintroduced.com.
Yeah.
So, here's where I want to start. I've been reading some of your work. You've been doing this for many, many weeks now. I haven't read it, but I've read a bunch. And so here's kind of where I want to start. Talk to the Think community, because I think in life, in business, one of the key things that's really important is knowing when to be vulnerable. And this to me is, your writings are very vulnerable, very raw, very real. Talk to me about the space you got to of being vulnerable to even start the writing.
That's a really good question, John. That's a great question. You know what? I started these writings probably 12, 14 years ago when my kids were, 8 to 10 years old.
Yeah.
And I had, you go through trials and tribulations as a parent and as a husband, and between my coupleship with my wife and the parenting with my children, there was a lot to write about. And I had felt back then that that sharing some of the experiences that I was having with them and with the coupleship during this time would maybe at some point help somebody.
Yeah.
And so, I think I started writing and I wrote maybe about 15 of them, and then I shelved it. Life got, I was in sports and watching this and dance and sports for a long time. And so I shelved it. And then my kids moved on and they're in college now and I'm empty nester, and thought I'd start it back up again. And that's when I started writing, probably about a year or 2 years ago.
Yeah.
As far as the vulnerability is concerned, I think that it's interesting because who we are outside to the world is not necessarily who we are inside to ourselves and the people within our, within our family, within our friend circles, that close knit group of people that we maybe are with more than everybody else. And so, I think that as far as vulnerability is concerned, I realized that so many other people were having the same feelings and thoughts as I was having, but really didn't feel comfortable to express them, and it wasn't just my close friends. It was acquaintances of mine that were going through the same things as I was going through. And it seemed like I was going through maybe some of it alone, and thought, this might be a great time to just sort of lay it out there for people and see if you build it, people will come.
Yeah.
And to see who was attracted to the messages that I was sending out. And surprisingly enough, there was a lot of people that I would never have expected for those messages to resonate with, that were reaching out to me.
Yeah.
And we're saying these messages, I'm going through this right now. And so it started with a seed, and then it just evolved.
Yeah.
And I just think that vulnerability part and that transparency and the honesty of laying it out there, you'd be surprised at who comes back and says it resonates with them.
Yeah. No, I love that. Vulnerability can be pretty contagious. Somebody's just got to take the first step.
Yeah.
It's interesting. You talk about inside and outside. I remember, and I saw on your website, you linked to Gary Zukav. So I just turned 51, and I think I was probably 24, 25. I read Seed of the Soul. And one of the things that had a really profound impact on me, because one of the things Gary Zukav talks about is the ideal. I may be getting some of this wrong, but this is the ideal human being is when the personality ends and the soul begins, and you can't tell. And I remember thinking in my early 20s, like, I know, like, that's not consistent for me. Like, I know, or I thought I knew, and I think I was pretty in line with it, like who my soul was, but my personality wasn't matching. And that had a huge impact on my road to therapy and holistic doctors and energy healers and things of that nature. But I want to go back to your. So I appreciate you. I appreciate you saying that. So I want to go
Yeah.
back to kind of your writing. So what does it do? And I know there's humility here, but what does it do for you? Like, how does it help you? How do your writings, putting your vulnerability out there, help you? What do they do to heal you? And then what does the response do for you?
I think that's a great viewpoint, because I think that maybe sometimes that aspect is lost when somebody puts something out into the universe like that.
Yeah.
They think that it's maybe being done for everything else but the actual author. And I think you nailed it. I think for me, this is very therapeutic, me sitting down and spending 2 to 3 hours writing a week. I think it allows me to sort out thoughts. It allows me to process things that have happened during that week. I don't ever come up with the topics before I'm about to write. They usually come to me very quickly, and I have a little meditative process that I use to get the topics, but then I just write. And I don't ever really go back too much and correct the information.
Yeah.
And so all of that stuff is coming from the place which you said, that deeper place. And so from that perspective, it's very therapeutic. It helps me take a little time to process stuff. There was my son played hockey growing up, and I had traveled with him all over the state. And one of the things that we learned early on from a coach was the 24-hour rule. And that is, before you're going to go and call the coach and ask him why your son was on the bench and wasn't playing the penalty kill, or why did you pull him off the ice, or, that whole hockey parent crazy thing, take 24 hours and let it process. And so a lot of the topics that I write about, I probably have gone through within that week. And that gives me a chance to process and think through what's really going on. Because a lot of times when our ego gets involved, the ego wants to go through the front door and get angry and get jealous, or whatever those emotions are that your ego sort of arms up with and weaponizes with. The writing allows me to just take 24 hours and process what's gone on and think about it in a meaningful way and present it in a way that is that people can resonate with, that gives a cohesive message. So yes.
I love that. So wait, I want to talk a little bit more about this, because whether it's in life or in business, finding the space to be still and be silent, to allow things to come through you, get back to center and take a breath. I find as a business coach that most people have a really, really hard time doing that, preparing, finding space for themselves, recalibrating themselves in their lives, regulating themselves, finding their rhythm. And one thing I love about your writing is it does have a very fluid rhythm. And so I'm not surprised to hear of your routine when you do it, but how can you guide others to find their own space, whether it's writing something, preparing for something, needing time to recalibrate, regulate themselves, so more can come through them versus kind of falling into the victim mindset like you're talking about?
It's a great question. Jon, these are great questions. You're really good at this.
Oh, thanks, David. Thanks.
Yeah, you're very good at this. So I will First off, I will say this, that most of the meaningful and innovative ideas that I've had around my business have come outside of my business. Those moments where I have either been way away from the business and my mind has not been on the business. Um, and so a lot of the innovative ideas I've had have come during those times, like you said, where I'm sitting in a moment of contemplation in a quiet space, or at a time where I'm vested so much in the present moment. And so here's what I want to say. I say that there's so much stuff that can pull us out of the present moment. Our phones, our computers. We seem to be so busy as a culture that we're constantly pulling ourselves out of the present moment. And you know that time is somewhat of an illusion. There really there is no past and there is no future. There's really only the present moment. Everything is happening instantaneously. And so a lot of times when we try and pull ourselves out of that moment, we get caught up and pushed either into the future, and we have thoughts of pushing us into the future, gives us thoughts of, let's say, anxiety, of things that are supposed to happen. When we're in the past, we might have thoughts of guilt, things that already did happen. And so a lot of times it pulls us out of that moment where we can create. All of your creation happens in the present moment.
Yeah.
And so I think you nailed it when you said, what can you do to find a place of quiet and contemplation? Any opportunity you have to be in a place where you are foundationally in the present moment, whether it's taking a bath, whether it's walking out in nature, that seems to be a really, really good place to get you rooted back into the present moment. Is put your phone away and walk into nature. Everything is happening right there. The sights, the sounds, the senses, everything pulls you into the present moment. And so magic happens in the present moment. I mean, athletes talk about it all the time when they talk about being in the zone where everything is just happening. You're not having to think about anything. And that's the point. The point is when you're not really thinking. And that's the place I try to get at with my writing. I'm not thinking as much as it's just coming through me and it's happening. Athletes have it. Business people have it. Everybody has it. At that moment when your thought and your thinking is gone and it's just coming through you in a way.
Yeah. And I think also it almost is like a routine you got to build, David. I mean, I think we all have the capabilities. We just sometimes don't all take the time and the space to do it. I think community, you've heard me talk about, my routine of meditating. I do free writing every single day, whether it's for 30 seconds or a couple minutes, where I just kind of get into a quiet space, close my eyes, and just type out whatever is coming to me. And it's a lot of what you're talking about, but it's a really therapeutic exercise because it gets you in real time. Let's talk about tiny insights to nudge your life open, right? And so I love the word nudge. I think it's great because all it takes sometimes is like you shared earlier, one person taking the first step of being vulnerable, one piece of information, one little piece of guidance, one little nudge can go a long, long way. And so I just want to kind of know how you came up with that phrase, tiny insights to nudge your life open, because one small nudge can open up a whole new perspective. I talk to clients sometimes about, can you change the past? And they'll say, oh, no, you can't change the past. And this, I said, well, you actually can if you change your perspective of the past. And sometimes I find myself in my work, because when I'm in my work, I am in a space where things flow through me. So when I'm in my work with clients, I can see things open, small, little, simple things open up big impacts. And so talk a little bit about just how you came up with this, because I've read a lot of your work. They open up big thoughts.
So that's interesting. So I think the idea goes back to sort of how the idea goes back to inside, right? So everything that we are experiencing in our lives has its creation inside of us. There's essentially two frameworks. There's framework 1 and framework 2. Framework 1 is everything that you see in your physical world outside. It's the family you've created. It's the business that you've built. It's the house that you've created and designed and you live in. Everything that is around you has been created by you, Jon.
Yeah.
It's being created by me. And so we are the directors of this movie that is ours. It's really been created and it started in framework 2, which is, let's say, in your dream state, when you go to bed at night and you dream and you start to put together you start to manifest what you want to see in physical reality. And you start to build the world that's around you. And so I think you nailed it. You can very, very much change the past by changing your perspective. And it's your belief system that starts to drive in those experiences that resonate with your belief system.
Yeah.
And so I think the nudging goes back to this. A lot of times when we are so caught up in all the world's confusion and chaos that is our life, we don't we're not listening to those quiet sort of whisperings that our higher self, you can call it the universe, however you want to detail it, is speaking to us. Our higher self, the universe, speaks very quietly. And so until we are able to slow down and be quiet, we can't hear what they're saying. And a lot of those nudgings offer huge, enormous growth potential and life lessons.
Yeah.
But we have to be able to get into a place where we can connect the dots.
Right.
And if you have all of this other stuff going on around you that's pulling you out of the present moment, it's very hard to connect the dots.
Yeah.
And so I think I think you can see that a lot of times the greatest opportunity for change comes in very quietly and nudges you very quietly. And then when you start to go down the rabbit hole, you see that there is so much there to be learned.
Yeah, I love it. And I'll just layer on top of everything you said, which I agree with all of it, is think community, whether it's listening to your gut, listening to your instincts, really kind of trusting that. It's so interesting, what you write about, I think we have a lot of the same philosophies on things. This isn't taught in school. This really isn't. This is something you kind of have to come across yourself, or if your parents or somebody in your family. But teaching people how to listen to their instincts and their gut to make decisions, it's so important. I want last question before we go into a speed round.
Sure.
You talked about connecting the dots, and I think connecting the dots starts with a lot of the things that you talked about, which is getting silent and feeling connected to yourself before you can even understand what the dots are. So how would you advise others to connect to themselves?
Well, that's a good question. So I'll go back to go forward. So for me, it started probably 25 years ago. Our IT manager at the time had been using a meditative technology called Hemisync, and it's short for hemispherical synchronization. It was developed by Robert Monroe in the late 1960s. Robert Monroe began having out-of-body experiences and couldn't explain them and didn't know what was going on. And back then, people thought you were crazy. There wasn't a ton of information on it. So what he did was he put together a group of voyagers. and he had been in TV and film, in sound actually, and he started mapping their brain waves during these different levels of consciousness or out-of-body experiences or these different explorations, and he found some similarities between the Voyagers. And so he cataloged all of his out-of-body experiences, and he had then taken the information that he gathered from these Voyagers and built these binaural beat technology to help me, you, anybody learn how to get into a meditative state a lot quicker than maybe studying transcendental meditation for 10 years. Basically, you put on headsets, they put in 2 different frequencies, and your brain creates a third frequency, and it basically synchronizes both hemispheres of your brain, and it allows you to flow into different levels. He found there was 48 levels of consciousness.
Wow.
Quicker. And so level 10 is mind awake, body asleep. Level 12 is expanded awareness. Level 15 is no time. Level 21 is the bridge between the physical and non-physical. So I went to the Institute probably back 20 years ago and began meditating through this process. And I think that was really one of the things that started me on this sort of voyage of to understand consciousness a little bit better, but also to begin to connect the dots for myself. I think that one of the great exercises or exercises that you can do to help know what's going on inside is that meditative process. But meditation, Jon, doesn't need to be sitting here. Meditation can happen in a walk in nature. Just taking the time to quiet down and walking in nature could be a meditative experience for you, something that can help you get inside and listen, during those times, things percolate up, right? We try to push down.
Right.
We try through the years to push things down that are uncomfortable for us. But it's at that moment when you start to address those uncomfortable things that you've tried to push down, that you start to be able to uncover and connect the dots.
Yeah, I love it. That was a way better answer than I thought that I was expecting, and I'm so glad it was.
Was that too long? Did I speak?
No, it was great. I loved it.
Okay.
I never knew about that institute. It sounds fascinating.
Yeah, hemi-syncing. You should look into it. I think it would be a next evolution for your expansion.
Yeah, and it's on your website under?
Yes, I think it's under the Monroe Institute. If you can.
Okay, I get it. Yeah, sounds amazing. I do TM or Silva Mind Method, and it's great.
Yeah.
All right, let's do a quick speed round.
Let's do it.
Yeah, you ready?
I am.
Let me see here. All right, here, ready. Okay, here we go. Favorite book and why?
I think the first one, Many Lives, Many Masters. It sort of started me on this journey.
It's the best. It started me on. It's one of the books that started me on my journey. Brian Weiss.
Great. That's great.
It blew that book blew me away. I read it when I was about 23, I think, and it changed everything. It got me on my path. Yeah,
I couldn't have said it better.
Yeah, I love it. Best piece of wisdom you've ever received?
I think the best piece of wisdom is that we create our own reality. There's no victims in this, Jon. Everything that we experience, we've created.
Yeah.
And that includes disease, Jon, and illness.
Well, that's for another show. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do that another time.
That's another show. Yeah. Finish this sentence. One thing everyone can do to find their quiet today is?
Put your phone away and take a walk in nature.
All right. Good. Think community. This has been great, David.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
I love this. I love talking about, your journey with lifeintroduced.com.
Thank you.
The energy around it and everything that you're doing for it and with it, for yourself, for other people. Think community. David talked about a lot of stuff. I'm a business coach. I work with people who are successful. and stuck, and I get them unstuck. And one of the things I love about this podcast is I get to have guests on the show to help get you unstuck. David shared a ton of stuff, and I'll just extract one thing, which seemed to be a consistent through line, which is find your quiet so you can hear the whispers. Really tap in. Yeah. So you can tap into universal energy and listen to your gut a little bit more. David, this was great. Tell people where they can connect with you and learn more about you and connect with you.
Oh, great. Yeah. Just lifeintroduced.com. We're on Facebook at Life Introduced on Facebook, and we're on Instagram at Life Introduced on Instagram. Yeah. Thank you so much, Don. It was awesome.
Yeah, this was great. You'll come on again. We'll talk more. I know
I'd love to.
We didn't even really get into many of your writings, but I wanted to just kind of connect on just the vibe around it. Think community. If David can help you, check out lifeintroduced.com or connect with him on LinkedIn, and you can reach me at jondwoskin.com. David, stick around for a minute. And thanks, everybody. Thanks, David.
Yep. Thank you.